Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. Today, we're taking a look at Linde. Now, this is a company you might not think about every day, but it's one that could really have a pretty big impact on your portfolio.
Absolutely.
So to figure out if Linde is the right fit for you, we'll be looking at a few sources.
Okay.
We've got a Wikipedia article, which will give us some background,
Right.
and then we've got some financial data from tip ranks and companies' market cap.
Gotcha.
And then we'll also take a look at their acquisition history so we can understand how Linde has been growing and where their strategy might be headed.
Sounds good.
So, right off the bat, what really strikes me about Linde is their size.
Yeah.
I mean, they are the world's largest industrial gas company.
Yeah. They are the global leader in terms of both market share and revenue. And that's not just about being big. It actually translates into a pretty significant competitive advantage.
Oh, for sure.
Because for investors, that kind of dominance suggests stability. It suggests pricing power and the potential to really weather, economic fluctuations.
Yeah.
That might impact some of those smaller players in the market.
Exactly. So they've got this, this market leadership.
Yeah.
What do they actually do?
Right. So at their core,
Mm-hmm.
Linde produces and distributes a whole range of industrial and medical gases.
Okay.
We're talking things like oxygen, nitrogen, argon.
So they're not just, selling gas canisters.
Right. But it goes even beyond just making gases.
Okay.
They actually engineer and build these large-scale chemical plants.
Wow.
So it creates this really complex infrastructure
Yeah.
that serves a remarkably diverse range of industries.
I mean, that's what I'm finding so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's like they're not just selling a product, they're providing a service.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's deeply integrated into how their clients operate.
So how does that, having this like infrastructure and this service component,
Right.
how does that actually impact their business model?
So it's a really good question. It creates a recurring revenue stream, and it fosters these really long-term partnerships with clients.
Yeah.
Across a whole bunch of different sectors. So think about it. You've got healthcare relying on those medical gases.
Right.
You've got steel manufacturers that need those industrial gases. Even the aerospace industry, they depend on Linde for these very specialized applications.
I see.
You might even be surprised to learn that the carbonation in your, favorite fizzy drink probably comes from Linde.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah, so that reach across all these different sectors
Yeah.
really speaks to their resilience,
Okay.
and their ability to deal with economic ups and downs. If one industry kind of faces a downturn,
Yeah.
they've got all these others to rely on, and that mitigates the risk for investors.
Well, that's a pretty compelling argument for investors, who are looking for that stability.
For sure.
But how do they get to this point?
Right.
Let's delve into a little bit of their history.
Yeah, their history is really fascinating.
Yeah.
It spans over 145 years.
Wow.
They started way back in 1879 with refrigeration technology.
Oh.
Pretty different from what they do now.
Yeah, for sure.
But what's really remarkable is their evolution and their constant adaptation.
Mhm.
They were pioneers in gas separation techniques.
Wow.
And in fact, their technology was even used to process uranium for the first atomic bombs.
Oh, wow.
So you can see even early on, they were involved in cutting-edge developments.
It's interesting how, they have these deep roots.
Yeah.
And then now they're at the forefront of this, future-focused industry like hydrogen.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting to see that blend.
And to really understand how they've grown, it's important to look at their acquisition strategy.
Okay.
The merger with Praxair back in 2018, that was a really pivotal moment.
Okay.
That created this global powerhouse that we see today.
Gotcha.
And they haven't slowed down since.
Okay.
In 2012, they acquired Linde, which is a major U.S.-based healthcare gas provider.
Yeah.
And that really solidified their position in the healthcare market. And then more recently, just in 2022, they bought a 77.2% stake in Nexair, which supplies welding equipment and services.
Okay.
So they're strategically expanding into these adjacent markets.
So it sounds like, they're really actively pursuing growth,
Absolutely.
diversifying their offerings.
Yeah. And that's something investors should pay attention to,
Right.
especially those looking for that long-term potential.
But to really grasp that potential,
Yeah.
we got to look at their numbers.
Yeah, let's dive into the financials because that's where things get really interesting.
All right, so let's talk numbers. What kind of financial picture are we looking at with Linde?
Well, we're talking about a financial giant, really. I mean, as of December 2024,
Mm-hmm.
their market capitalization stands at a massive $208.23 billion US dollars.
Wow.
That makes them the 57th most valuable company globally.
Wow.
And to give you a little perspective on that,
Yeah.
back in 1996, their market cap was just over $7 billion.
Wow.
So you're looking at a company that's grown consistently for nearly 3 decades.
Yeah.
It really says something about their ability to generate value.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Their current share price sits at $435.30 with a one-year change of plus 6.24%.
Okay. So they're not just some, flash in the pan.
Right.
They've got this track record of financial success.
They've been around. They're consistent.
So what can we learn from their recent performance?
Well, if we take a look at their 2023 financials,
Okay.
they tell a pretty positive story.
Okay.
Their revenue, operating income, and net income were all in the billions of dollars.
Wow.
Which indicates, strong profitability and really efficient operations.
So for those investors seeking stability in returns,
Yeah,
this has got to be encouraging.
absolutely. However,
Okay.
it's important to consider how analysts are viewing their future prospects as well.
That's a good point, because are there differing opinions about where Lin's headed?
Yeah, there's some varying perspectives.
Okay.
Kiprings, for example,
Mhm.
gives them a moderate buy consensus. Okay. With a 12-month average price target of $514.20.
Okay.
So that suggests that there's some decent upside potential for investors.
Right.
Which, aligns with that positive financial performance we've been discussing.
Yeah.
However, Zax, they're taking a slightly more cautious approach,
Okay.
issuing a hold rating,
Okay.
but they do still acknowledge their strong fundamentals,
Right.
giving them A scores in both value and growth.
So it seems like there's a bit of healthy debate among analysts.
Yeah.
How should investors sort through this when they're making their own decisions?
Well, I think the key takeaway here is that multiple perspectives exist,
Right.
and each one has its own methodology and its own way of weighing different factors.
Yeah.
So investors really need to consider these varied outlooks
Okay.
along with their own research and their own personal risk tolerance.
Right.
For some, Lin's track record and market leadership,
Yeah.
that might outweigh a cautious hold rating.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Others might prioritize the higher growth potential
Right.
of companies with more aggressive ratings,
Yeah.
even if it means accepting a bit more risk.
Okay.
So ultimately, the decision to invest in Linde
Yeah.
really comes down to an individual's goals
Right.
and how it fits within their diversified portfolio.
We've talked about their financials.
Right.
They seem pretty positive.
Yeah.
Analysts are,
Generally optimistic.
yeah. But let's shift gears a little bit and talk about Linde's innovation pipeline.
Okay.
And one area that I find particularly interesting
Mm-hmm.
is their involvement with the Hydrogen Council.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is where Linde's commitment to future-oriented growth really shines.
Okay.
They're making significant investments in hydrogen vehicles,
Okay.
positioning themselves at the forefront of what could be a really disruptive market.
Yeah.
And it's not just about technology either.
Okay.
This reflects a deep understanding of the growing importance of ESG factors.
Mm.
Right. And ESG investing has definitely gained a lot of momentum lately,
Absolutely.
with people seeking companies that align with their values.
Right.
So how does Lin's approach to sustainability kind of play into that?
Well, they're walking the walk.
Okay.
They're not just talking about hydrogen. They're building wind-powered hydrogen production plants.
Oh, wow.
So that commitment to clean energy sources really speaks volumes about their vision
Yeah.
and their willingness to invest in a more sustainable future.
So for those investors who prioritize ESG,
Yeah,
this makes Linde pretty compelling.
it does. It makes them a very attractive option
Yeah.
because they're not only offering potentially strong financial returns,
Mhm.
but also that positive impact.
Their commitment to both innovation and sustainability is really noteworthy.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up our analysis of Linde,
Mm-hmm.
we need to weigh the pros and cons of actually owning their stock.
Absolutely. Let's break it down.
Yeah.
So starting with the positives, Lin's market leadership is undeniable.
Yeah.
Their financial performance is consistently strong.
Mm.
They've got those diverse business segments.
Yeah.
All of that offers stability
Right.
and potential for growth.
Yeah.
And then you've got their forward-looking focus on innovation,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the hydrogen space.
Yeah.
That positions them really well
Yeah.
in a rapidly changing landscape.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you can't forget their commitment to sustainability.
All right.
their strong ESG profile,
Mhm.
that really aligns with the values of
Yeah.
a growing number of investors.
Those are some serious advantages.
For sure.
But what about the flip side? What are some potential drawbacks?
Well, no investment is without risk.
Right.
Zach's pointed out that Linde has relatively high valuation metrics.
Okay.
So that might suggest
Yeah.
that their stock price already reflects a lot of the optimism about their future.
Okay.
And as they expand into those new markets, they might encounter some regulatory hurdles
Yeah.
that could impact their growth trajectory.
Okay.
And then, as with any global company,
Yeah.
they're subject to those ups and downs
Right.
of the global economy,
Right.
which can always create some uncertainty.
Right. Those are all really important things to keep in mind
Definitely.
when you're, considering the potential.
Yeah.
Now, one last thing before we move on.
Okay.
What about their dividend policy and share buybacks?
That's a great question.
Because that's a key consideration for a lot of investors.
It is. But unfortunately,
Okay.
our sources don't really dive into Linde's specific policies in these areas.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but this lack of information
Okay.
isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Okay.
It's actually an opportunity
Okay.
for potential investors
Mm.
to do a little digging.
Oh, yeah.
You can look into their financial reports, their investor relations materials,
Yeah.
and that can give you really valuable insights into how they're returning value to shareholders.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Sometimes the unanswered questions
Right.
can lead to the most valuable discoveries.
Absolutely.
So by doing that research,
Yeah.
you can get a much more complete understanding
Sure.
of Linde's approach
Mm-hmm.
to these things, and then you can make a more informed decision.
Exactly.
So it really seems like Linde is a pretty complex company
Yeah.
with a long history of success
Mm-hmm.
and a bold vision for the future.
Definitely.
I mean, their dominance in that industrial gas market,
Yeah.
their strong financials,
Mm-hmm.
and all those strategic acquisitions.
Right.
It seems like they're really well positioned for growth.
Yeah, I think so.
But as with any investment,
Mm-hmm.
there are some risks to think about,
Of course.
like their valuation
Yeah.
and just the general uncertainty of the global economy.
Right. And I think what makes Linde particularly interesting is their commitment to innovation,
Right.
specifically in that hydrogen sector.
Yeah.
I mean, their involvement in the Hydrogen Council
Mm-hmm.
and their investments in those wind-powered hydrogen production plants,
Yeah.
that really signals a long-term strategy
Hmm.
that aligns with those technological advancements,
Yeah.
but also those growing ESG concerns.
So that kind of raises a question for investors.
Yeah.
Will hydrogen vehicles be the game changer
Right.
that Linde is banking on?
That's the big question.
I mean, if it is, what impact could that have on their valuation?
Yeah, and their competitive standing.
It's a big bet,
It is.
but they do have that history of adaptation and innovation,
Right.
so they're not afraid to take risks.
And I think ultimately
Yeah.
the decision to invest in Linde comes down to your own individual goals,
Mhm.
your risk tolerance,
Yeah.
and how much you believe in their vision.
So before we wrap up, I do want to emphasize the importance of doing your own research.
Oh, absolutely.
Don't just take our word for it or
No.
just rely on the opinions of analysts.
Mm-hmm.
Dig into their financial reports.
Yeah.
Check out their investor relations materials.
Right.
Really consider if their strategies align with your own investment philosophy,
Exactly.
because then you can really figure out if Linde is the right fit for you.
That's the key.
So listeners, we encourage you to continue this deep dive.
Yeah, keep
Explore all those resources we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Do your own research.
Definitely.
Come to your own conclusions.
And while you're at it,
Yeah.
head over to the comments section of our YouTube channel.
Yes.
Let us know what you think.
We want to hear from you.
Would you invest in Linde?
What other companies or industries would you like us to explore?
Yeah, give us some ideas for future deep dives.
We're always eager to hear your thoughts and suggestions.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Linde.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll catch you next time
See you then.
for another exciting exploration of the world of investing.